Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is here that much awaited fiscal stimulus package has been announced. The size has been announced by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It's going to be 10% of the Indian GDP. The size is 20 lakh crore rupees. Let me repeat that for you. 20 lakh crore rupees. He went on to say 20 lakh crores in 2020. That's 10% of the Indian GDP. Short on details, did say that starting tomorrow, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is going to start announcing the contours and the details of the economic stimulus package. In reaction to that, we've already seen the SGX Nifty jump about nearly 400 points in trade. Having said that, the Prime Minister has also made it clear there's going to be something for everybody in this fiscal stimulus package. Industry wanted one of 5% of GDP, but the Prime Minister pulling a surprise, saying it's going to be 10% of GDP and is going to address all stakeholders from farmers to SMEs to MSMEs as well as to industry. Nikunj Almia, my managing editor right here joining us. Nikunj, 20 lakh crores, 10% of GDP, and industry was only hoping for 5 lakh crore rupees.
No, Nantara, while the speech clearly was targeted towards the economy, the Prime Minister has come out and said, look, the coronavirus and the lockdowns have had an impact on the economy, and this is for the first time there has been a very large formal recognition by the Prime Minister himself and really assuring everyone that look, the economic damage has been very large, but with each crisis you will always get an opportunity, and this indeed could be India's moment to really come back because of this. So the economic package, which we all were waiting for, has been finally announced in terms of an headline. It needs to be put into context here that this also includes the earlier measure which the Finance Minister and also the Reserve Bank of India had announced earlier, a couple of weeks ago when the Reserve Bank of India announced the moratorium plan. The borrowing limit also has gone up by nearly 7 lakh crores. So in terms of the headline number is very, very big. This is in line with what other large developed countries have done when it comes to stimulating the economy. So today is the Prime Minister's focus, attention, messaging, communication, I think, was all centered around the economy. So there's a big departure in when he had earlier addressed the nation in terms of emphasizing the need on the lockdown and social distancing. So from there, I think this is a very welcome delight, because all of us were in a sense trying to understand that what was the economic thinking to fight the corona war. So I think on that front, this is a big package which has been announced. SGX is already reacting. Right, so Nantara, I believe we have got some guests. Would you like to just take it forward?
Connecting the guests and waiting for the communication with the director in our production control room. But having said that, this is the first time you're seeing the Prime Minister addressing the economy, making it very clear that it's going to be on certain pillars. For example, creating demand is going to be a New Deal type package. Nikunj, remember we were talking about this, that the Prime Minister declared a war. What's going to happen is going to be something we saw in 1929 and post the World Wars. Is the New Deal, is how the Prime Minister's office is actually calling it that. I believe Maithili Bustermath, our in-house expert, is joining us. Maithili, it's 10% of GDP, 20 lakh crore rupees. We don't know the contours, but this much is clear. It's motivated by the New Deal. What you saw post-depression in the United States, what you've seen post the World War, we have to be self-resilient, make our own brands, rely on creating demand, a package that is going to address farmers, SMEs, as well as the taxpayer and industry.
Well, yes, Nayantara, the number is quite significant. 20 lakh crores is not a small amount, but I would like to see a little bit more details. We'll have to wait until Nirmala Sitharaman announces the finer details. So I think there are two key takeaways. One is the substantial stimulus that he's announced, 10% of GDP, but we'll have to see whether this is 10% over and above what is already announced, or does it already include what the fiscal deficit number.
Mr. Anil Agarwal joins us now, Vedanta Group. Mr. Agarwal, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I would have loved to ask you a question on Vedanta delisting, but I guess right now we need to address the Prime Minister's economic package. 20 lakh crore. that accounts for 10% of India's GDP. I want to hear the excitement in your voice, sir.
Yeah, we have to see the detail, but, see the intention of our leader. See, the intention is full of enthusiasm, and he's at this time, he's saying, I'm going to take infrastructure, economic development. That's what we wanted to listen. And that's what he's trying to create a demand. So this is amazing. And 10%, we used to hear about 10% GDP America is offering. And we never dreamed that India will offer something like this. So for me, the takeaway is to what he's saying to self-sufficient. I can only add from my side, the most important thing is natural resource which we import and the oil and gas. And that has to be, we have enough reserve. And what he's saying that I will simplify the process, to do the phenomenal reform. And we are looking forward where reform, self-certification, allowing people to do work should happen. And that's very, very important. And number two, he said about the lockdown, I'm looking forward how the lockdown will take place. But most important thing is we have to see, he talk about everything. Small, biggest thing he says, please remain Atmanirbhar. Don't import. The smallest thing we can make it here. So he's clear that the kind of hundreds of billions of dollars we are importing a small thing. Let's develop it ourselves. And we buy something, we must say, is it made in India? Is it made it here? And we have the capability, which we have the capabilities, require a little bit of sustaining. He talk about khadi, he talk about Julaha, how they are making handloom. So this is a real thing, and I'm 100% sure it will be implemented. We are going through the huge pain, and this pain, he's talking something like this. Normally, the whole world will talk something different, but he's talking how he can take forward his country. So I'm looking forward two things. One is to how Sitharaman talk about what is the detail about this economic package which he's going to offer, and about the lockdown condition.
Okay, Ajay Singh joins us. Let's get a quick reaction from him. I'm coming back to Mr. Niranjan Hiranandani after that. Okay, Ajay Singh, 20 lakh crore of stimulus has been announced. This includes what RBI announced earlier versus what the finance minister gave out in a first help to the poorest of the poor. Now we don't know the fine print, but what would you like to see in the fine print? Because the onus in the Prime Minister's speech, Mr. Singh, was clearly targeted towards Make in India, Made in India, and revival of the agrarian sector.
I think firstly the Prime Minister really needs to be congratulated. I think he has proven with his speech that he really is a master of trying to create an opportunity from adversity. This is what he was talking about. The 10% of GDP spend will be, of course, a massive stimulus to the Indian economy. No matter where it is spent, that will be a massive stimulus to the Indian economy. But what was even more interesting for me was the structural change that he talked about in land, in labor, in laws, fundamentally relooking at our economy, simplifying the processes and systems, making India a strong, vibrant economy, and his focus on self-reliance. This is something that Indian industry has said for the longest time. There is nothing that we cannot do. We need to act and behave like partners with the government, the Indian corporate sector, the Indian people, and the Indian government. We are all together. We are all one India, and we must dedicate ourselves to creating the strongest India that we possibly can. This is what I think the Prime Minister's vision is, and it's our job to work with him and with his government to fulfill it.
Mr. Shandelia also joins us now. Mr. Shandelia, I want to hear excitement in your voice, and also let's understand that what do you think the fine print of the package would contain, because the Prime Minister clearly has hinted towards Make in India, How can you convert this adversity into opportunity? He gave this great example of khadi manufacturing, how that has worked. Do you expect that something very big for the agrarian economy and for the farm sector stroke important rural sector is coming? Okay, Niranjan Hirandandani, the same question. Niranjan Hirandandani, the same question for you. The headline is a very promising headline. This is the headline which I'm sure will make everyone very happy. Nearly 10% of the GDP is going to be, the package is of the size of nearly 10% of the GDP. Some has come out, some has not come out. What do you expect the fine print to contain? Because the Prime Minister, Mr. Hirandandani, clearly focused on addressing the agrarian distress, and there was a lot of onus on Made in India.
I think extremely impressive, unbelievable, very happy. We had in ASSOCHAM suggested 14 lakh crores. He's beaten us completely in his thought process. I think probably in the 6 years that I've heard Mr. Modi, this is the biggest visionary document that he has given to us tonight. I mean, he has given a vision of the next 5 years of what he wants to do with India. It's not only about the COVID crisis and the turnaround. He's given a vision of how he wants to take up the economy. And I think if you are looking at 20 lakh crores, the market and economy will pick up. You will not get 1.9% or 1% GDP. We will race before March of next year to 3 to 4 to 5% of the economy if the entire impetus is put up. And I think I'm extremely impressed with his thought process in every sector of the economy, and especially his focus in diverse directions, vision, the economy, the infrastructure, the technology driven, the demographics, and to multiply, do it, the supply chain, the farmers, the SMEs. I'm so happy and impressed. I cannot say more than what I couldn't have been better. I don't think since 1991, when we had the reform process which had come up for India, I think this is probably that kind of day today wherein this paradigm is taking place. The devil is in the detail, and of course we will go through it. But if you are having 20 lakh crores pumped into the economy in terms of direct into all the sectors which the Prime Minister has talked about, I am superbly happy, impressed, unbelievable, thrilled beyond imagination. The industry and business which was crying.
Niranjan, I don't feel that excitement in your voice. 20 lakh crore, 10% of India's GDP. I don't hear that excitement in your voice. Why is that?
I am not excited. I am ecstatic. The word is ecstatic. The joy which I'm seeing in terms of it, the input that has come into it is unbelievable. I don't think I could have said more. I've spoken so much earlier that I was not
as
happy.
Ecstatic as Mr. Niranjan Hirandandani. Mr. Chandelier, are you also as excited, happy, and are you also doing cartwheels when you heard the Prime Minister?
No, I think it's very, very clear. I was very excited in a manner that he was very open, transparent, and he talked about, kept on insisting on self-reliance, which means that he's going to give a lot of boost for exports, for also made in India, ensure that we're able to have a real global thing. He talked about global supply chain. He reiterated a lot of times on global supply chain. And also within the country, he talked about every sector. I mean, of course, he did give focus on things like the handloom industry and agrarian reforms and so on. But he talked about he will cover land, labor, liquidity, law, the 4 L's he talked about, which means I think he's looking at a holistic package. Yes, there will be details. We need to look at it. And I think there will be some pluses and minuses. I don't think we can keep cribbing about it. I think we were all expecting a substantial amount of package, even from CII and SIAM and others. We have been giving a lot of requests for substantial quantum, and I think he has come out openly with 20 lakhs. Yes, he has not given the details. He said Finance Minister will announce the details. We have to wait and see. He also slipped in something on the lockdown, that there will be 4.0 of lockdown coming in. I think we need to be prepared for it, and that's part of the game. But one thing he kept on mentioning about the self-reliance, and I think he says economy has to move on. We can't keep quiet. We will face the consequences. We will open up the economy, but how fast, what will happen to the red zone, orange zone, green zone, all that is yet to be seen. But my belief is that he's sincere about it. And I think if his ministry comes out with the right kind of details in terms of program and cover all the sectors, and also the bureaucracy also falls in line to ensure that the things are implemented, I think it's a holistic. But only one small catch I would like to mention, that he said that this 20 lakh crore includes what has been announced by RBI and whatever we have announced so far. So that means it's not a fresh 20 lakh crore. It is 20 crore inclusive of what has been announced, but notwithstanding. And I think from a holistic package, I think it's a good package. Let us wait and see the details. And I don't think we can comment on it just now, but I do hope the sincerity with which he announced these details, the details will also pan out to be very good for the country. And I think we should look forward to, we should be positive, and I don't think we should look at everything with a negative eye. Yes, we have been screaming, we have been talking about what we need to do for the economy, but I think we are not like the other countries which have gone about very foolishly on opening up. We have been conservative, we have taken the lockdown in its spirit, the entire industrial sector and other sectors have taken it in the context. I think let's now wait and see as to what happens, we span it out. But I think the country is determined, we are positive, we are united. I'm sure we will win at the end of the day. We should have positive thinking and not have any kind of negative feelings about what. This is usual, it will happen. I think he also mentioned this corona will stay for longer period. It could be 18 months, could be 2 years, we don't know. Even if the vaccine is found out, what kind of vaccine, what kind of speed with which the vaccine will affect, all that is very uncertain. This is an unknown animal, unknown thing, which is a small, little, tiny thing that is creating havoc in the whole world. But luckily, we are far, far better than many other parts of the world. I would like to leave it at that and saying that the package is possible.
Now of HDFC Limited, KK, let's get a reaction going, and then I'll have a follow-up question. 20 lakh crores. Some part of the stimulus was already announced initially by the Finance Minister and then the RBI, but the Prime Minister clearly, surprising everyone with the quantum of economic package. Are you surprised, delighted and excited with today's announcement?
I think it's a very good announcement. 20 lakhs is much more than what industry was looking up to. So I think it has to be taken very, very positively. We have to await details to understand what it is, what constitutes that 20 lakh crores. My sense is that obviously the obvious thing would be making sure that the poor in the country, the weaker sections of the economy are well taken care of in terms of food, in terms of money and stuff like that. But I think it is very important to ensure that jobs are created, because you cannot keep giving free money and free food forever. So therefore, it is critical that whenever economy starts, whenever the lockdown is fully removed and we have normalcy in the country, maybe 3 months, maybe 5 months, whenever that is, we have enough jobs that are available for people. So job creation is extremely important. And job creation can happen if government spends money on infrastructure, building roads, building bridges, building rail lines, and so on and so forth, for which they can generate money through the issue of tax-free bonds, where the cost of funding for the government will be lower. And the second thing is job creation in sectors or incentive to sectors where job creation is the maximum, like real estate, like SMEs, like manufacturing. So these are the sectors which have their own challenges. We need to understand what those challenges are, what the requirements for those sectors are, and then provide the encouragement that these sectors require so that they create enough jobs where people, when they come back to work 3-4 months later, they have those jobs on hand.
Now, KK, let's understand the maths. Where do you think this kind of financing will happen? If you simply add up the maths, the government has increased borrowing target by 7 lakh crore. Reserve Bank of India has announced, some package when they announced the moratorium, and then Finance Minister also had alluded to a package in a first speech. Where do you think this large part of financing or deficit financing will come?
Well, one has to wait and see the numbers, but I think the saving that we would have got on oil, because there would have been a very large amount of money factored in for oil purchase, that would be a huge saving, because we've not reduced the cost of the price at which petrol or petroleum products are purchased in the market, but the cost at which these petroleum products are being acquired is much lower than what was originally targeted. So there would be an automatic saving over there. Similarly, I'm sure there will be a saving on a number of other imported items, because with the global economy being what it is, prices globally have come down for a variety of commodities which we import. So that would give some savings. But we need to, understand the exact arithmetic and the exact mathematics on what the saving is from.
All right, let's take a look at what we have seen today. The big economic stimulus package that we have been waiting for so long is finally here. We have a ballpark figure and the details will follow, but the figure is big. Remember, all of this time the conversation was about how big will India's package be, why are we taking so long, what proportion of GDP. So we have the answers to those so far. 20 lakh crore rupees in all, about 10% of GDP. It includes the 1.7 lakh crore rupees that the finance minister had announced at the beginning of this lockdown. It also includes a lot of what the RBI has talked about, in terms of its operations to increase credit flow, but it still leaves a sizable amount that India will now spend to really come out of this lockdown. It's a spend with a plan towards self-reliance to make the 21st century truly an Indian century, and that's the plan that was outlined by the Prime Minister today. Another very important detail is the fact that lockdown 4.0 will take place, but it will look very, very different. It has been left to state governments to come through with all of those details. Let me go across to Maithili Bustumat for some of that math. Maithili, altogether we're still looking at a sizable package right now coming in.
Tamanna, as compared to perhaps most of your panelists, because though the Prime Minister has talked about a 20 lakh crore, the fact is that the fiscal deficit is effectively a stimulus. And the fiscal deficit this year is going to be anywhere near 5 to 6%. We really do not know the final number. So we'll have to see how he has arrived at this 20 lakh crore. Is it an addition to the fiscal deficit, or is it just an additional effective 5%? So I would be much more wary. Yes, it is good that the government has finally decided that there is a need for an economic package, which all along they seem to be in denial. So it is good to know that the government finally concedes, and it is going to be sizable. But whether it's going to be 20 lakh or not, I will reserve my judgment. And at the moment, I think so much depends on what the finer details are, how we go about implementing it. So I would give it a much, much more cautious welcome than I'm afraid almost all your panelists. We'll have to wait until the FM comes out with further details. But two key takeaways. One is, of course, the size of the package. Two is also the fact that he talked about further reforms. That would be good, except that any reform entails short-term pain. At the moment, when we are already going through considerable pain, I think we should be very, very careful in going down the path of further reform. The third thing that I would like to emphasize is that though it is good to be self-reliant, I think it would be a big mistake if we turn our back on globalization. Yes, it is wrong to be excessively dependent only on one source, but I think to turn our backs on globalization and talk only in terms of local would also perhaps be a mistake. So as of now, a cautious welcome, Tamanna, from me.
Let's take a look at the key messaging over here, and one of the big points that the Prime Minister made was about being vocal about going local. I must also say that this was tempered by saying when we talk about a self-reliant India, we are not saying this at the cost of the rest of the world. The world is also depending on India right now. Let me go across to Niranjan Hiranandani to get his take on the key messaging coming in and how the devil sometimes, Mr. Hiranandani, is in the details. We'll have to wait and see what's really in this package, isn't it? And when we talk about reforms and making laws much easier, do you think that that's the big cue to take away?
It is. I have not heard of a better visionary economic statement from the Prime Minister in the last 6 years as I heard tonight. very explicit, very clear, very focused, and very correct. If somebody in the bureaucracy mucks it up, that's a different story. But I can assure you that the figure is extremely impressive. I was not expecting it. Even if we are talking about, I was expecting somewhere around 14 lakh, 15 lakh crores is what I had said. It is now 20 lakh crores. And I think the targeted thinking, not only of the short-term issues, but the long-term goals in the next 5 years of what he is talking about, of where India will be growing and the direction that he desires it to go, I think on the economic front is absolutely perfect. I'm really very happy. But yes, Mithili, you're right. We have known in the past how the bureaucracy really mucks it up in terms of a good intent at the political level. When it actually comes out, the details can actually destroy the intent to which it has happened. We hope that this won't happen this time. Number two.
Just let's get in a view from him. Pranav, the number is a very encouraging number. It has surprised everyone's expectations. 10% of the GDP. This is a number which is just lower than Japan and equivalent to US. Let's understand the arithmetic. Do you think this is a headline which we should not really get carried away by, or you think government will be able to plow up resources in order to keep up their commitment?
Well, you see, frankly, how this figure has been arrived at is really going to be the question. So one would really need to know the details. And from what the Prime Minister said, these will be announced possibly in stages by the Finance Minister. So it may still be a while before we know. But, we need to be very clear about what is needed. 10% of GDP as a fiscal package is really roughly what we needed. But 10% on what is really the question. Because what you need is 10% on the ground. That is what the damage requires. If a large chunk of the 10% are things like guarantees or are essentially financial transfers rather than solid expenditures on the ground, then the effect will not be sufficient. So we really need to know the details.
Important is where this money is going to be dispersed and what are the buckets truly that it will go into. If you look at the 5 pillars on which the Atmanirbhar plan is based, it also includes infrastructure, it includes supply chain, it includes demand and creating that demand. There was talk about labor, there was talk about small business and corporate India. So the number is large because the demands have also been that many. Pretty much every industry has made a demand. Pranab Sen, how would you want to see this distributed or pushed? What do you think would be the right mechanism to use these kind of funds to really rev up the economy, and how closely does it need to be tied in with a clear plan on how to exit the lockdown?
Well, as far as the immediate requirement is concerned, it is to ensure that production capacities do not fold up. That is, people don't go into bankruptcies and have to close shop. That is priority number one. Because if you have serious damage to production capacities, then even a very large fiscal package is not going to have the effect or the desired effect simply because the production response may not be forthcoming if people are locked up in recovery suites. So the first order of the day are really in 2 parts. One is to ensure that the humanitarian aspects are taken care of, which is people who have lost their jobs, who have very little savings, are given income support. Now, this does not really add to demand very much. This is basically just a transfer. The second part of it is to make sure that companies do not go bankrupt. That is really the big challenge immediately. This cannot wait. This cannot happen 8-9 months from now. We are already in a situation where these kinds of losses are starting to become evident. So this has to happen here and now. What the RBI has done within its mandate is laudable, but the point is that the RBI's mandate is limited. So as far as the debt repayment issue is concerned, RBI has left the discretion to the banks. Now, how the banks are going to react, we don't know. We know, for instance, 3.2 crore loans have been given the moratorium. But of these 3.2 crores, 32 million, how many are retail loans and how many are production loans is really critical. If the retail loans don't matter that much, the production loans matter a lot. So whether or not the government is going to build in some form of a loan guarantee to ensure that the moratorium is pushed through to everybody who needs it is really going to be the issue, in my opinion. In the longer term, once the lockdown is lifted, even if it is done in a phased manner, the fiscal focus should shift towards providing demand support to the industry, because by then incomes would have been badly damaged, aggregate demand would be down, and the government will have to come up with expenditures on purchase of real goods and services. That is where the infrastructure program becomes important. So one has.
Sunil Singhania also joins us now. Let me very quickly get in a market voice here. Sunil, SGX is up 300 points. From a market standpoint, are we in for a gap up start? And do you think markets, and especially domestic cyclicals, construction, real estate stocks could have a very strong start? Are you surprised with the package? How do you think markets will react tomorrow?
So, good evening, Neeraj. I think, the market has been very desperately waiting for something on the economic package, and every weekend we used to have hope that something will come up. So, I think today's package obviously is a pleasant surprise. Now, the naysayers and the negative guys would say that it includes RBI package and so on and so forth. But having said that, the most reassuring thing from the Prime Minister's speech was the word like labor, land and law. These have been taboo words, and no reform in India has ever taken place on this side. So I think the amount of the package itself is surprise. And these words obviously ring a positive bell after a long time as far as the markets are concerned. The details are still on. The fight against COVID is still going on. But amidst all this gloom and doom over the last 2 months, I think this is a refreshing half an hour of words from the Prime Minister.
Indian markets, Sunil, this year are underperforming. Nasdaq is in the green. We are down 20% from the recent high. Do you think Indian markets now will catch up?
I don't agree that Indian markets are underperforming. I think Nasdaq is an exception, but vis-a-vis the other markets in the world, I think we are almost there, or in fact slightly better also. I think Nasdaq has been a beneficiary of 4 or 5 good companies which have been growing despite what is happening on the COVID front. But yes, from an India perspective, while other countries were in the process of announcing various...
Venu Srinivasan of TVS Group joins us now. Mr. Srinivasan, everyone on our panel is using words like we are excited, we are doing cartwheels, we are overjoyed with the size of the stimulus package the Prime Minister has announced. Let me get a first reaction from you, and then I'll come up with a follow-up question.
I think the first is Prime Minister showed outstanding leadership in battling the crisis. A lockdown of this kind required enormous amount of courage and strength of character. And since then, we've been waiting for this package. But every time I spoke to people in the government, they said, be patient. Whatever comes, we will do something which is really will help the country. But please be patient. So we've been waiting for the last 3 weeks with fairly high-level assurances that something will be done. And then when they did it, it was really on a grand scale, a scale that we cannot think of or would not have expected. You know, I have said it many times. They're looking at $100 billion, but here it has gone way, way beyond all those expectations. And the second thing that we want to say is that really he wants to take the country global. He wants to build global Indian companies and really provide global companies the base in India. I think it's a very visionary package. And it's not just the package, but the vision that backs the package is outstanding.
You know, Venu Srinivasan, the interesting facet and part of that vision was how this could be an avsar, an opportunity for India as the entire world is sort of reeling from the impact of COVID-19, and a focus there on strengthening our internal supply chain so that we stay globally competitive. What do you think is the recipe we need to follow for this? We know now that there is a will to spend money, there is a will to reform, and the time is ripe. What in your mind would be the priority list to actually make India globally competitive?
I think there are 2 or 3 things that we definitely need to do. Make it much easier to do business. While we have come up to 50, we should come to the top 5 in ease of doing business. Because after the top 5, others are not going to get that much investment. And therefore, we need to, and a lot of it has to do with states. Really, the central government today has done whatever it has done. But most of the problems we have with the ease of doing business is at the state level, the Factories Act implementation, the Pollution Act implementation, the labor laws are all state subjects. So states need to have competition to attract investment, and states must understand that if they don't attract investment, they're not going to provide jobs. And so I think it moves to the states.
In fact, Maithili, let me come across to you to now the role that the states will play in all of this, and where do they come in this 20 lakh crore rupee package? Because remember, there are a lot of demands from states as well, and now the big challenge that faces all governments, state and center, is how to raise revenues now that demand remains depressed.
Well, states are going to have a very tough time because the bulk of the responsibility in this particular matter particularly rests with the states. So as we've seen, they've been asking the union government for more funds, and given the fact that revenues are going to be very, very compressed, in fact, they're going to be a very small fraction of what was estimated in the budget. It's going to be a tough call. Most of the money that the government is talking about, this 20 lakh crore, will have to come from some kind of borrowing or some kind of printing of money from the Reserve Bank of India, which is why I said I'm not remotely as ecstatic as all your corporate members on the panel, because we'll have to see what the finer details are. Where is this money going to be spent? How is it going to be funded? And who is going to be doing the spending? As far as things like reforms are concerned, it's not an on-off button. These things take time. So we'll have to wait and see. Let's watch out for the details given by that the finance minister is supposed to announce starting tomorrow. And I think most important of all is to get the financial sector and the financial system rolling once again, because as long as banks remain credit averse and risk averse, we're not going to be seeing the kind of development that we really need to see. We're not going to see industry kickstart. We're not going to see the economy kickstart again. So I would like to reserve my judgment as of now. Yes, it is very good that the government has finally taken a decision, and the 20 lakh figure that has been announced seems good, but I'd like to see the finer details, as I said, because the fiscal deficit is effectively a stimulus. So is this 20 lakh crore that the government is talking about in addition to the fiscal deficit? I don't think so. It would be including the fiscal deficit, in which case the total size of the stimulus comes down substantially. It will, of course, still be significant. So let's wait for the final details. So as of now, the verdict from me is a cautious welcome, Tamanna, and I think I stand by that.
Sunil Singhania, in terms of a market orientation, banks have been underperforming. Do you think now banks automatically could see, some uptake, because suddenly because of this package, the view would be liquidity will come back, entrepreneurs will get cash, the economy will start moving, and NPAs may not be all that high as markets were fearing. Do you think in the short term, after months of underperforming, corporate banks could be in for some uptick?
There are two aspects to it, Nikunj. One is obviously, as you said, there was this concern that because of this lockdown, there would be NPAs from two aspects. One is obviously no economic activity, and second is obviously we do not know when the economy will start to chug along. I think there are two aspects. One is because of this package, obviously there will be a breathing space. And second is the Prime Minister has clearly said that, we have to ensure that the country also moves along. And he said that before 18, there will be announcements on the opening up. So it I think indirectly means that we are set for a reasonable, relaxation as far as opening up of the economy is concerned. And I think in that respect, I think banks, the doom and gloom scenario for the banks might not be all that gloomy. And Nikunj, we all know the market. I think now suddenly if the mood changes a little bit towards the positive, people would want to get into high beta and stocks which have fallen the most. And I would say that the financials would, in that respect, be the one where at least in the initial, few days, there will be again an optimism and even traders might jump in. So for the next 3-4 days, I think you should definitely see the beaten down and the ones which had the maximum kind of concern, which would include the banks, to be bouncing the most.
Irfan Razak of Prestige Group also joins us. I want to remind our viewers that they're watching this special broadcast as we break down the mega announcement made by Prime Minister Modi earlier this evening. So what really has come about? There's a 20 lakh crore rupee package, includes what was announced earlier, will be about 10% of GDP. There will be a lockdown 4.0, but it will look very different from the previous iterations. The money and the package will be accompanied with serious reform. That's the promise that has been made, and a focus for India to be self-dependent, self-reliant. Those are the broad contours and headlines of what was announced by the Prime Minister this evening. Let me go across to Irfan Razak and really your response, Mr. Irfan, to what the Prime Minister has said today and how you would like to see it actually being rolled out.
I think the Prime Minister's statement is very visionary. I think as a head of the state, no other country has made such a huge announcement. It's not small. And basically, it's visionary because it talks about self-dependency, self-reliance. It talks about a lot of reforms. And he's talked about land, labor, liquidity, and law. And he's also talked about the 5 pillars, which is the economy and the infra and the systems and demography and demand, which means all this will get a stimulus. Basically, he realizes that there's demand internally within the country and the economy can be revived. And at the same time, he talked about seeing that the people who have been affected the most, the common man, the small trader, even they will be taken care of. So I believe it will be something which will be for all. And we are waiting with an abated breath what can happen. And every industry will benefit from this because it's a huge stimulus. And I'm not looking at it from a narrow angle from a real estate industry or a housing industry. He also talked about land and labor because real estate is about housing, land and labor. Now, let us see what exactly we get. And basically, the whole idea is to see how this country can move forward, can really go to the next level. We are excited in the sense that it's just to see how we have a vibrant India, we have a healthy India, and that's the whole purpose. And even in the lockdown 4.0, he very clearly said, I think the point that he said is, now it's that virus is here to stay. We'll have to wear our mask and go ahead with life. I think that's what he meant, that lockdown will slowly be removed bit by bit. And we have to go ahead along with our lives, keep safe, keep healthy, protect each other, and create the awareness. And that, I believe, is a very, very big statement, because we can't be locked down forever, because then the economy gets killed. And he himself has talked about a huge stimulus for economic growth. We'll wait for the details, but the statement itself is hugely visionary. And we are looking with the bated breath to see what's the next one. I don't want to get into micro details. Micro details will come, and I'm sure there'll be something for everybody and something for the country as a whole. And that is
the
what
micro details.
Exciting.
Yes. No. Absolutely. No, we don't have the micro details right now, and they will be unveiled. So two major sets of details that we have to look out for the next couple of days, really. One is starting tomorrow onwards, we will hear from the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on what really is in this overall 20 lakh crore rupee package, how much of it is packaging and how much of it is real monetary support, and where it will go. We'll be watching those very carefully. We will also know what the version of Lockdown 4.0 is going to look like. I want to welcome Viren Chetty to the conversation. Viren, one thing that seems to become increasingly clear is that we will have to increase our tolerance, in a sense, quote unquote, to COVID-19. We have to now live with the fact that cases will be there, they will increase, there is a wait for some cure or vaccine, and we can't any longer keep putting our lives, the economy and everyday business on hold. Do you think that message came out very clearly?
I think so. I think what's happened in the past 2 months is that we've learned a lot more about the disease. Number one, we learned that it's highly transmissible, but more important than that, we learned that it has quite a low mortality rate in India compared to different parts of the world. If you go by the official figures, it's around 3%, but most people estimate that we aren't really counting all the people that have coronavirus. And if we count them all, that means the mortality even goes below 1%. So it's not as bad as we thought it was. Of course, when the number of absolute people start increasing, those who have coronavirus are elderly, immune compromised, patients with cancer, patients who have otherwise dependent on family members will be vulnerable, but we have to do all that we can to protect them.
Venu Srinivasan is still with us, I'm told. Mr. Srinivasan, this is a question I really wanted to ask you as well, that how are we now beginning to sort of change our mindset for the days to come? I think post May 18th and how things unfold post May 18th is going to be very crucial, almost as crucial as the details of this 20 lakh crore rupee package, because the package kicks into effect when the economy revives once again and opens up once again, isn't it?
Yes, I think a lot of things will change because we will start with only 1/3 or 1/4 or half the workforce. And more importantly, the demand has to come, even if for this half the workforce to actually get the economy going. And therefore, it is a slow but sure process that we have to follow. We have to follow distancing. We have to work, sanitize our offices between shifts, sanitize factories between shifts. The canteens must have a different level of hygiene in handling food. So it will be a slow process. But if we had not had this package, we would have looked at a 12-month-long trough before recovery occurred. Now I'm confident that the third quarter will show a significant recovery in the economy and the demand. But most importantly, I think that the poor people, the marginal people, the shopkeepers, the medium, small and micro industries have been taken care of is the best thing that has been announced today.
So, Mr. Srinivasan, what would you say is the anchor theme? I mean, the anchor theme is made in India. The anchor theme is perhaps making India more reliant. So, apart from big industries getting a booster shot, looks like the entire attempt here is to reboot the entire MSME space, Mr. Srinivasan?
Yes, I think we have to reboot the MSME space because they are under so much pressure. that they will actually would have collapsed because of credit squeeze, running out of cash to run their companies. And with the monetary policy and with this package, I think we will reboot them. We will also reboot the customers in terms of spending money to buy products, whether it is housing or whether it is two-wheelers or whether it's consumer products. I think this will give an enormous boost of confidence. And as you know, economies are turned around as much by confidence as the cash flow.
Mr. Sen, I'm coming back right to you. Let's address that. What really could be the fine print which we need to focus on, because the headline package accounts for nearly 10% of the GDP. But there are a lot of ways you can arrive at this number. Nearly 6.5 lakh crore package has been announced. Within the remaining part also, there could be an element of credit financing. There could be an element of subsidy intervention. So do you think the real impact on the economy may not be as large as what the headline is? Mr. Sen? Mr. Kirloskar, good evening. Thank you for joining us. When we spoke last, the corporate India was crying for economic package. Now the economic package has arrived. In the fine print, what would you like to see? So if you are happy and excited today, what will make you do cartwheels if you see that in the fine print?
No, 20 lakh crores is a lot more than what we've asked for, number one. So I'm sure that whatever we have asked for is probably all covered in that and more. So I'm happy. I think now it's really time to be responsible industrialists, responsible citizens. We make sure we follow the mask and the hygiene and the social distancing, and make sure we get a return on this 20 lakh crores.
Okay. Mr. Kirloskar, in terms of the direct impact will only come, some would argue, Mr. Kirloskar, if banks they start lending, if the credit in the system picks up. So do you think this package largely should also be targeted towards making sure that the lending and the activity at the MSE level starts, and also in a sense the wheel of the economy which are reversed completely, this package will really help it resolve?
See, for me, most important, besides whatever you've said, I think a lot of those will already start coming out in the package, is how will demand be generated? Okay. Increase of demand is most important for us to use this package and to get industry rolling. So I'm hoping this will get this package will give confidence to the consumer that they start buying.
Yeah, Mr. Kirloskar, the question is, what are the reforms that accompany this package going to look like? And I think, if I can get your comment on those. One thing that COVID-19, the lockdown and the economic impact of it has shown us that there is some serious reform that we need to look at. Some of these labor reforms are being pushed, although haphazardly, by different states. We need to look at formalizing the economy much more. We've had this sudden quantum leap to digital India, where there is no choice but to move there. What do you think are the major reform processes that we can now look forward to being implemented along with this package to make sure, as you said, we get most on our return?
I will wait to see the reform packages as they come, but I have a fair amount of confidence that all the inputs that have been given by CII, other associations, other experts will certainly be looked at. I have a lot of confidence on that. People in government have been listening, have been taking a lot of data for us. Let us wait and see how it comes. I'm also confident that if they're not adequate or there's something wrong or something we don't like, we can talk back with them. We can go back to the government, talk on this, and get changes made.
Maithili, I actually want to take that question to you. The formalization of the economy and how we can move towards that. Now, the Prime Minister spoke in some bit about the large number of India's, I would say, informal sector, the migrant workers, the shramik that he was referring to, and this package is also for that section of society. It's for everyone. What do you think will be the push and the focus towards formalization, say, of employment and labor?
Well, that's going to be a very tough call, Tamanna, simply because we haven't succeeded in all these years, because the informal sector is as much as 85% of the total workforce. Given the fact that, yes, part of the reason for this is because we've had very impractical labor laws, and some of these labor laws do need to be drastically changed, modified, altered, junked altogether. Along with that, there has been talk of a labor code. But remember, all this cannot happen overnight. What you do need to do is start the economy moving once again, kickstart the economy. For that, I think what Pranab suggested is the best. First, we need to have an immediate income transfer and a substantially larger transfer than the 500 rupees that you announced for just a few targeted individuals. You need to have a much bigger across the board income transfer to the migrant labor. You also need to have much greater support for the MSME sectors. And this can be done through a very good kind of system that the US has followed of a credit backstop for banks to start lending to the sector again. So let's wait see what kind of finer details the FM comes out with, because I think reforms basically has to be a much slower process. Out of the three factors of production, land, labor and capital, the capital market is fairly reformed. It is land and labor that we need to have huge reforms. Land acquisition, particularly for large projects, is virtually impossible. So I think we need to move slowly, but we need to move very carefully on all these. So the intent is good, but I'd like to see how it actually works in practice. More also of details of what this 20 lakh crore is all going to be about. My sense is that this includes a fiscal deficit of close to about 10 lakh crore. Government has already announced a 12 lakh crore borrowing for this year. So my sense is that the additional spending will be much less. So let us wait and see. But as I said, I remain the outlier and the lone one out in your panel, because the industrialists are clearly over the moon. I'm not as yet over the moon. I'd like to reserve my judgment and wait and see the finer details, and then maybe I will pass comment.
But to be fair, most people we've spoken to have also said that they're waiting to see the finer details. The fact is, what we have to go by today is intent and what has been declared by the Prime Minister. Everyone has to wait and see what really comes out of it. Let me get a quick word from Mr. Srinivasan in the context of the reforms that we'd like to see accompanying this. They say never let a good crisis go to waste. Now, that to me seemed to be the central theme, that we can find an opportunity in this adverse situation for India and the world. And there's a lot of talk about, India stepping up to the plate as the world order changes, etc. Do you think the capability, the will and the time frame really exists to shake things up in terms of reform?
I think so, because just you have put words in my mouth when you said you shouldn't let a good crisis go to waste. Adversity is a great opportunity, and I think this is the time and this is the kind of crisis in which the nation also and society, the polity, will understand that we have to do the next breakthrough reforms. And the biggest breakthrough reforms is land, law, and labor. The courts have to be reformed, the contracts can be enforced, where you have a separate commercial courts which can fast track, which will not give adjournments at the drop of a hat, so that the cases go on for years before they are settled, and new procedures in court. Labor, we need to provide flexibility, yet taking care of labor's equity and give them justice. So maybe you provide greater payouts for them if you take action, but you can still take action. And land, of course, I think that 6 times rural land and twice urban land was really very bad, because urban land already, you can't get your registered value if you go to sell land today. After the cleaning up of the economy with the demonetization, black money has substantially reduced in land transactions. So urban land is already market values at registered values. So if you have to pay twice, no major infrastructure in urban areas can be done. And 6 times again for rural land, maybe twice is okay, but 6 times was over the top. And I think these are the 3 issues that he has addressed, and we are eagerly looking forward to the details.
You know, the devil is in the detail, and there will be time for detail, absolutely. That starts right after this. But for now, I think there is some clarity in place. All of the speeches by the Prime Minister have been watched very carefully by everyone from corporate India to, the Aam Aadmi to see what it portends for what's coming. One thing that is sure is that now there is an intent to move on. The lockdown will not disappear overnight. We will not possibly go back to, the world as normal. I think pre-COVID era will have to be forgotten for some time now, and that reality is dawning on everyone. That realization is dawning. But can we make the best of what we have right now? Can we move on? Can we restart economic activity? Can we focus on Make in India? Can we be vocal about going local? That's what the Prime Minister is pushing for. And can India really find a way to place itself in a position to really not just survive but also thrive? These are questions that we leave you with today as we take a very short break. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining in and giving us their take on this very big announcement. Before we slip into that break, just leaving you with that key announcement on the economic stimulus. Yes, the package is finally here. Just leaving you with that announcement that the Prime Minister made.